The year is 1989, the long-awaited sequel. The third film in Indiana Jones has just come out. We've seen it as producers, time-traveling producers, not really, but for the sake of this show. And we are going to fix it. Cue the intro.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mirror Movie Universe podcast. My name is Nate, and I'm one half of the hosts of the shindig of a show. And across the aisle and across the country from me on the Mirror Movie Universe podcast set, which is just our respective homes, is Dan. Say hello, Dan.
Hey, everybody. Like Nate said, I'm Dan. I'm the other half of the host of this shindig of a show.
Yeah, I don't know how that started, but that's what I'm saying now. So, today, as you said during the intro, we're going to talk about Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, a delightful film from 1989. I've got lots that I love about it, as do you. But in order to talk about what we like about it, we're going to have to talk about what happens in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. So, Last Crusade opens in Utah in 1912, and we meet some Boy Scouts on a trip, and two of them kind of walk away from the beaten path and enter a cave. And in this cave is a guy with a jacket and a hat, and he's pulling a cross out of the ground. It's this golden cross. It's very pretty. It's the cross of Coronado. And we're like, it's Indiana Jones. Holy cow. But then you remember that it's 1912. And he's got to be pretty young at this point. And the camera pans around, and it's not Indiana Jones, it's somebody else. And the camera pans up to the Boy Scouts watching these, and it turns out that one of these kids, played by River Phoenix, is Indiana Jones as a youngster. And he steals the cross from these bandits, led by this guy with a fedora, who's just in the credits as Fedora. He's not named. And he runs away with it. He eventually hitches a ride on a circus train and falls into a pit of snakes, and learns to hate snakes. Apparently, that's the origin story of that. Falls into a lion car and gets a whip and fends the lion off with it, and eventually escapes enough to come home to his father, who's evidently kind of a hands-off dad, not really a supporting father figure, and an academic as well. He makes him count to 10 in Greek before he can speak. The guy shows up at the house, claims that the cross is rightfully his. And there's this guy in a white suit outside who's obviously orchestrating the whole thing, and says that he won't press charges if he gets it back. He takes his hat, he puts it on Indiana Jones as a youngin'. Indiana Jones lifts his face up, and it's Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones in 1938 off the coast of Portugal. And then he's getting the cross back from the guy in the white suit, and he punches him in the face, and he jumps off the ship with the cross, and the ship blows up because, of course, it does, and it's very cool. So, he goes back to King's College, and just like the intro to Raiders of the Lost Ark, he's met by Marcus Brody, who's a museum curator at King's College. And they talk about the cross of Coronado for a bit, and they discover that Indiana has been sent this, which is a parcel through the mail from his father, which contains a diary of his father's Grail quests. And Indiana doesn't think much of it at first, and he's called by some rather suspicious-looking men to a party where a guy named Donovan, a very rich guy, think like Rockefeller or Carnegie or one of those guys, is talking about finding the Holy Grail. And he shows Indiana Jones this shield, which is a marker to the Grail. It's the stone tablet with a cross and a bunch of Latin or Greek writing on it or something. And he's like, we need to find the other marker. We think that it's in Venice, Italy, and our project leader has gone missing, and we want you to find it. And Indiana Jones says, well, yeah, you really want my dad. He's the expert on Grail stuff because his father's been obsessed with it his whole life. And it turns out that his father is the project leader who's gone missing. So Indiana Jones opens the package and finds out that he's been sent his father's Grail diary, which I have right here. And he goes to Venice, Italy, on this guy's dime, and the guy tells him not to trust anyone. He meets a doctor in Venice, Italy, along with Marcus Brody, who's come along for the ride this time. And her name is Dr. Elsa Schneider, if I'm remembering correctly. So they go through the library in Venice, and they discover a route down to the catacombs in there, and they find the sarcophagus of this other knight dude, and his shield is the second marker, and he takes like a crayon rubbing of it, and they escape through the sewers, and there's a boat chase with these guys called the Brotherhood of the Cruciform Sword, who are sworn to protect the Grail, and have since it was hidden away. And the Brotherhood guy lets Indiana Jones go, and he says, "Why do you look for the cup of Christ? Is it for his glory, or is it for yours?" And Indiana Jones is like, "I didn't come for the cup of Christ. I came to find my father." And the guy says, "Oh, in that case, good luck. He's being held in this castle on the Austrian border." And so Indy and Elsa go to this castle, and they find that it's overrun by Indiana's greatest enemy besides snakes, Nazis. And they break Indy's father out of his room, and we find out that Dr. Elsa Schneider is secretly a Nazi and has been this whole time, which is not very cool. So Indy and his father are captured. They get away. They find out that Indiana's dad actually slept with Elsa, which is awkward because so has Indy at this point. Whoopsie. And they go running away for a little bit to go after some pages of the Grail diary that are missing, and they run through Germany looking for them. They end up at Berlin at a book burning. Hitler signs the Grail diary in a hilarious sequence. Marcus Brody has some of the Grail pages, and he's off to Palestine. And he's searching for the map, and he runs into Sala from the first movie. The band's back together, basically. Indy and his father, after getting the book and the pages back together, they meet Sala and Marcus in the desert. They fight the Nazis, and the Nazis have this really cool tank thing, and they run around in the desert for a bit. The Nazis beat them to the Grail temple. I was looking for the map. Here's the map to the Grail. It's a map with no names. They beat them to the temple, and Indiana Jones has to find the Grail before his father dies of a gunshot wound because the evil Nazi dude shoots him. And he has to face 3 tests. The penitent man will pass, which is he has to kneel before God. He has to spell God's name, which is Jehovah, which begins with an I in the Latin alphabet, by walking on some tiles on a floor. And then he has to leap from the lion's head. And he has his father's diary, which has been given all these clues. There's an earlier point in the movie where he has to find a thing that says 3, 7, and 10, and there they are in my diary. And the leap of faith from the lion's head, he lands on a bridge that he couldn't see, and he eventually finds this 600-year-old knight who's guarding the Grail. And the knight has like 1,000 golden cups and all of this kind of stuff. And he's like, choose one, but choose wisely, because the Grail that, is true will give you eternal life as long as you keep drinking from it. And the Grail that's false will kill you. And the evil Nazi dude, Donovan, who turns out he was right to say, don't trust anyone, because he was Nazi this whole time, and Elsa Schneider walk into the room. The Nazi drinks from the cup and he dies. And Indiana Jones finds the real Grail, which was not a false shiny cup. It was a very simple cup of a carpenter, which I always thought was very poignant. He drinks from it and he doesn't die. He immediately rushes it out to his father and he pours it on his wounds, and it saves his life. And the dad looks at the Grail and realizes that his quest that he's followed his whole life has come to an end. And Elsa snatches the Grail up and says, "Oh, we can take it. It's yours and mine," and is ready to leave. But the knight warned not to take the Grail from the temple, and so there's an earthquake and a crack opens up in the floor. And Elsa is hanging onto a thing, reaching for the Grail. And Indiana's like, "Oh, give me your other hand." And she doesn't. She reaches for the Grail and she falls to her death. And then when Indiana Jones is in a very similar situation, he's reaching for the Grail. His father's got his hand. And throughout the entire movie, he's been calling him Junior because he has the same name. Not Indiana. His real name is actually Henry. But he says, "Indiana, let it go." And Indiana Jones lets the Grail fall into the abyss, and he takes his father's hand and they ride off into the sunset. And no Indiana Jones movies were ever made ever again. It is a wonderful movie. I love it quite a bit. I've been paging through my diary looking for the 3 the three tests because I was going to describe it at the end, but I couldn't find them. I found 3, 7, and 10 and the map. But who cares? Anyway, I love Last Crusade. It's not my favorite Indiana Jones movie, but it's an A
It's
plus film.
mine. It
I
is so
I
good.
I bet it is yours. What do you like about it?
It is by far the most fun Indiana Jones movie. Everything
Yes.
in it is so good. Can I just talk for a second about the jokes in
Oh
this
yeah.
movie?
Oh
It's
yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
Like the everything from X marks the spot to with any luck he's already got the grail already. And
Does
then it
anyone
cuts
here
to
speak
him.
English? Yeah.
Yes.
It's wonderful.
To we
Um
named the dog Indiana.
yeah.
Um
There's a
Probably
the
the best though is the no ticket. Like
yeah, he
when he
punches the guy out
punches
of the
the guy,
plane.
throws him out the window, he's like, no ticket, because he's wearing the like porter uniform. I love it.
Oh yeah.
Even when they're in the library and the librarian is stamping books and he's
Mhm.
smashing the floor as she's stamping books and she just looks at the stamp. Hilarious. Just
Oh yeah.
hilarious.
I love all the jokes in this movie. My favorite bits are in Indy's introduction to his father. It's the first time that we meet Sean Connery as Indy's dad, and he smashes a vase over his head. Um, and he's like, "Oh, I thought you were one of them." He's like, "Dad, they come through the door." And then he's like, "Don't worry, mate, I'm all right." And Sean Connery is like, "Thank God." And he holds up the vase and he's like, "Look, it's a fake." He cares more about whether or not the vase that he smashed over his son's head, whether or not that he's destroyed an antique, more than the fact that he's just given his son a concussion. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
I love the relationship between Indy and his dad in this
yes,
movie. It is so good. It's so well done and so well acted between those two. Harrison Ford and Sean Connery knock it out of the park. And the best example of it, I think, is there's this chase scene on motorcycles where they're being
yes,
pursued by these guys on motorcycles. Sean Connery's in the little sidecar and he's
mm-hmm.
clutching his little bag, and India's doing all this stuff, and he jousts one off, and then he does this thing, and he gets away, and he's so proud of himself in
Yeah,
that moment. He gets away, and he's like so proud, he's so cocky, like kind
yeah.
of does his little rueful smile, and he turns to his dad. His dad's just winding his pocket watch, and it cuts back to Indy, and he's just like, ugh, and he's like so disappointed, but it's
Oh
so
yeah,
good.
mm-hmm.
Like I don't know if that was ever like written out in the script, like Indy looks at his dad who is winding his pocket watch, or if the
Yeah,
actors just did that. But it's
yeah,
so phenomenal the way that they've acted out that relationship, that they've portrayed that on screen, that like all Indy wants,
mm-hmm.
all Indy wants is his dad's approval. And that's what
Yeah,
he gets at the end of the movie.
yeah.
It's so great. It's so great.
Yeah, I love the scene. So in the desert fight scene with the tank goes off a cliff, and Indiana Jones is on it, and he manages to climb back up the cliff at like the last second. But his dad thinks that he's dead, and they have this wonderful moment where they hug. And Indiana Jones is like, because I said in the Raiders review or the Raiders episode, he's just a normal guy. He's gotten beat up and punched and dragged behind a tank and all this kind of stuff. He's like he's like panting on the ground after they hug. And then his dad's like, "Why are you sitting there resting? We're so near the end." And he's this old man and he's like trotting off to the next thing. It's delightful. But yeah, like Raiders is great, but it doesn't make me cry. I still cry in this movie because, of all of the stuff with his dad, especially when he heals his dad at the end. It's a beautiful moment in the film. I love it a lot. But yeah,
It
yeah.
is beautiful, and the title is really great because it refers not only to the crusade of the knights who go and find the Grail and everything,
Mm-hmm.
but it is very much his father's last crusade that
Mm-hmm.
is being fulfilled here, and it's a beautiful thing. He finds his dad. That's the treasure at the end. It's not the
Yeah,
Grail. He
it's not
finds
the
his
grill.
dad, and he gets his dad to be okay, and that's beautiful.
Yeah.
What else do you like about it? What else?
So we're back to Nazis, and I like that very much.
That's a
But
weird sentence to take out of context.
yes, that's true. We're back to, all right, I'll say this. We're back to killing Nazis, and I like that very much. Like all of the fight sequences where Indiana Jones, like, there are some great contenders for Nazi kill of the week in this movie. But I what I like most about it being back to Nazis, a lot of people are like, "Oh, it's the same as Raiders, it's a cop out." There's a speech in the middle of the summary, I was talking about they're running around Germany. They go to Berlin. They find the Grail book. Hitler signs it. They give it back. In the middle of that, because it's a little bit confused. In the middle of that, they pull up on their motorcycle and sidecar to a crossroads, and one of the signs says Berlin, and the other one is like, going to find the Grail. Because I think Elsa has the diary at this point, and they need to go get it from her. And Indiana Jones is arguing with his father over whether or not they should go into Berlin and find the diary. And he's he says two selfless martyrs, and he takes a name in vain. Sean Connery slaps him, and he delivers a speech where he's like, the quest for the Grail is not archaeology, it's a race against evil, and if the Nazis get it, they'll march across the face of the earth with impunity. And you can't, like, the quest for the Grail with a different villain is nowhere near as important or poignant. And it's all summarized up in that little Sean Connery speech, where he's like, this isn't going after a thing. This is a race against evil. So I love that we're back to killing Nazis. I also had, and this is the last thing that I really like about this movie, because I love the humor, and I was going to talk about that, but we already did.
Mm-hmm.
I also watched this movie in black and white, and looked at some of the lighting, and I discovered something about it that I had not previously seen. So when you are on camera, you can get a little glint in the pupil of your eye. I've got it right now, and Dan's got it right now. And most of the time, like, that's seen as like a bad thing. It's like unfavorable. So like you try to light it so that comes out of characters' eyes. Sometimes it's intentionally put into movies. In the horror movie The Thing, you can tell who is actually a shape-shifted thing and not a human, because they've got that glint in their eye, or don't. I don't remember. But there's a scene in the middle of the movie where Elsa reveals herself to be a Nazi. She looks down at Indy. She says, "I'm sorry." And she takes the ground, and she looks up, and she's got that glint in her eye now. And she does for the rest of the movie. And every scene she's in, she has that in her eye. And when she's looking at the Grail and reaching for it, she still does. And then she falls to her death. And when Indiana is reaching for the Grail and he's like, "I can just get it, Dad," he has that for like a second.
Wow.
And then when he looks back up at his dad, it's gone. And he takes his dad's hand, and he leaves. So some like second unit lighting director was like having fun with it, and I don't know if it was intentional or not, but it lines up in the points of the movie, and it represents the greed of going after the Grail and not the quest against evil. And so Elsa has it once she's revealed to be a Nazi, and Indy has it when he's reaching for the Grail. It's just a tiny little symbolic thing that I didn't get until I watched this movie in black and white, but I did, and I love it.
That's
But yeah,
beautiful, man.
it's
That's
great.
beautiful.
I love it. I would not watch Temple of Doom in black and white because it's not worth it. But Last Crusade's great. It's great. It's your favorite Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah.
What would you fix about it, though?
So, okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the opening of this movie.
Yes.
By far the weakest opening of the three, and I mean no disrespect to the young actors who plays Indy. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But it does the worst job that a prequel can do, and it's what George Lucas does in a lot of prequels, which is not tell me why a character believes something, but instead tell me frivolous things about that character. It's like, hey, did you ever wonder where Indiana Jones got his hat? Well, it wasn't from a hat store. No. Did you ever wonder where Indiana Jones got that scar on his chin?
Because
No.
Harrison Ford
Well,
was in a car
now
accident.
you know.
Yeah.
That's and boy, what a coincidence that everything happened in that same maybe 20-minute time span that informed everything about how he would be when he grows up.
Yep.
The crazy thing is, during that opening sequence, the young Indy says, "It doesn't belong to you. It belongs in a museum."
Yep.
Which
he repeats that later as well.
Defining character traits of Indy, right?
Yes. Yep.
Why? Why does he why is he so taken with that?
Yeah.
So I want to scrap the opening and do a completely different one. I want
Oh,
Indy and his dad,
oh, okay. Okay.
young Indy. So
Mm-hmm.
we're still back in time, 1912. Young Indy and his dad on an archaeological dig.
Mm-hmm.
And I want his dad to be kind of condescending and rude and teaching him a little bit about like looking for traps. And he's like, don't stand there, son. Watch your step, all this stuff. And Indy's,
Okay.
oh, okay. And he's trying to do this because, again, in the prequel in the movie, he's already great at a whole bunch of stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
he's learning, his dad is showing him all of this. And
Mm-hmm.
then they get the treasure, whatever it is, a pretty jewel or whatever.
Yeah.
And Indy says, Dad, this is great. We're going to be rich. And his dad says, no,
It belongs
son,
in a
it
museum.
belongs in a museum.
Okay. Okay.
Cut
No, let's.
to present day, and he's gone into academia to be like his dad and everything, and he just goes straight to King's College.
I think, I don't think it'll play well in theaters because it's not an opening action sequence unless you give it some punch, give it some rapidity. Um, I like that the it belongs in a museum comes from his father because I agree with you that I don't, the whip and the hat and all of this kind of stuff and the fear of snakes all happening in the same 20-minute time span doesn't matter. I don't care that where he got the whip or where he got the hat or anything like that. I do care where he got the notions about that. um I just, you got to give it some punch, you got to give it some rapidity.
You're
um
right. It needs that opening action sequence thing. Maybe him and his dad are getting chased by somebody, some rival archaeologist or
mhm,
something, and his dad doesn't fight because his dad's not a fighter, and Indy wants to
mhm.
fight or something like that. You could throw that in. They're
Yeah,
being pursued. You could have a boat chase or a train chase. Do a train chase. The train is fine. They can
train
still
chase
be
is
on a
great. Yeah.
train and running and stuff. I'm fine with that. But yeah, just make it Indy and his dad and show me why he believes what he believes,
Mhm.
not why he wears what he wears.
Okay.
That would be huge for me. And that's a blunder that good old Georgie Boy has made in many prequels.
Yeah.
So tell me
Yep.
more about why the character is the way they are.
I don't care that young Indiana Jones built C3PO. Like, who cares about that? Yeah. No, I'm with you 90%. As long
Okay.
as you make it punchy, I'm with you 90%. It's just that the 10% is just so good. And that's my fix.
Okay.
Um,
What's your
so
fix?
so I love the opening sequence. River Phoenix, by the way, as young Indiana Jones is great. He and Harrison Ford acted in the 80s in a movie called The Mosquito Coast, where he plays Harrison Ford's son. And on set, he was doing um, impressions of Harrison Ford. And so when they were casting young Indiana Jones, he was like, this kid, like he can do a young me. Um, I don't like all of the stuff with like the snakes and the whip and the stuff. I don't care where any of that comes from. So cut that out. I don't care. Well, I don't care where he gets his hat. I do care where he gets it from, if that makes sense, or who he gets it from. And so in the script originally, I don't know if you know this, in the script originally, the guy in the jacket and the hat who is just unnamed in the credits, his name is just Fedora. That's Abner Ravenwood in the original script. And so I would put in a
That's so
line,
much better. Oh,
yeah. And so like the transferring of the hat, it all makes sense because he's Abner Ravenwood. He's instantly becomes kind of a father mentor figure to Indiana, who takes him down this grave robbing path instead of this straight and true path of his dad, and be kind of surrogate fathers Indiana Jones from that point on. So that was in the original script. Like, he's named as Abner Ravenwood, and he's not in the credits as that. But that's what I would change. I would have the same opening, but have that guy be Marion's father from Raiders. That's what I would
I
do.
love that. That's even better than mine because what it does is it informs, again, why Indy is the way he is. He's trying to be like Abner
Mm,
Ravenwood, the guy who became his mentor, a surrogate father figure, not just some random dude that he met for an afternoon. Like, it makes so much more sense when you give it that, when you give that there to inform his character. Well,
mhm.
don't do mine, do yours, make it Abner. I love that. I've wondered forever what this guy was like and everything. So yeah,
Yeah,
make him Abner Ravenwood. Make Indy like, at the
yeah,
end of it you could add a line where he's like, hey, do you mind it? I think your son's pretty pretty great. Do you mind if we go on some adventures or something?" And
Yeah,
Sean Connery's just like, "Yeah, whatever. I don't care."
exactly. Because he's such a hands-off parental figure, he doesn't care. And so yeah, although like he has to get something from his dad though. And in the movie he gets a lot of stuff later in life, but in his childhood he just gets the knowledge. He doesn't get anything. So I do like the "it belongs in the museum" coming from him.
I did think that was the only weird
Yeah.
thing was that already as a kid, he's like, "It belongs in a museum," and you're like, "Why?
Yeah. If
Why?"
you if you're gonna do your fix, you should have the leader of the bandits or something that's chasing that Indy wants to fight be Abner Ravenwood. I just want that character to like not shoehorned in, but I want an insert because um it could play off of our fixes for the first movie, which we
Mm-hmm.
talked about his relationship with Marion and her father quite a bit. You could do a lot with that, but they don't. He's just a guy, and he just thinks that it should belong in a museum. So I think either one of these would make Last Crusade infinitely better. It's I don't I'm not sure that my fix would make it better than Raiders, because I love it to death. But
Certainly
I'm pretty
ties it
darn
back to
happy with our
Raiders.
work this week, Dan.
Yeah.
Holy cow!
All right. Well, as always, internet, sound off. What did you like and hate about Last Crusade? What fix do you have in mind? We both fixed the opening, although we did it in different ways. So let us know which one you prefer.
Mhm.
Yeah. As always, sound
Absolutely.
off in the little doobly doo. And like, comment, subscribe. We very much hope that this finds you well. And thank you for watching or
Yeah.
listening.
See you, everybody.